the study of the price of cocoa in the world market. How does the demand for cocoa affect the price of cocoa in the world market? With the number of chocolate products in increase in appetite, the demand for cocoa has increased throughout the years. According to Lauren Davidson, global demand for chocolate is outpacing the rate of cocoa production. Brace yourselves, as the world's favorite sweets will sooner or later be out of reach. As John Mason of the Ghana-based Nature Conservation Research Council said, in 20 years, chocolate will be like caviar. It will become so rare that the average Joe won't be able to afford it. Well then, if the demand for cocoa increases, then the price of cocoa increases as well, because in order to meet the demands of the consumers, larger production of cocoa is needed, which causes the price of cocoa to go up in price. To validate whether my hypothesis is true, we are going to take a look at a single variable analysis and a two variable analysis. First, we're going to take a look at our main variable, the price of cocoa. Using the measures of central tendency, the distribution of the data and where the outliers are located can be determined. According to Table 1.1, the mean, median, and mode all have different values and are slightly off from each other, which mean that the price of cocoa does not have a normal distribution. The mean is greater than the median, which means that the distribution is positively skewed. This also means that the outliers are at the high end of the distribution. Since the distribution is skewed, the best measures of central tendency to be used would be the median, as the mean is susceptible to the influence of outliers, while the mode in this situation represents less than 50% of the data. With the measures of variability shown in Table 1.2, the values tell us how spread out a distribution is. The range tells us how spread out the whole data, as it is calculated by subtracting the minimum value from the maximum value. Although simple, the range does not often represent the dispersion of a skewed dataset, because just like the mean, the range is easily distorted by outliers. To minimize the distortion, the interquartile range IQR is used instead, as it measures the dispersion from the central value median. It is calculated by subtracting the first quartile Q1 from the third quartile Q3. Another way to find out the spread of the distribution is by calculating variance and by taking the square root of the variance to get the standard deviation. The standard deviation tells us how spread out the values are from the mean. Using the box and whisker plot, we can also determine the distribution of the price of cocoa using the position of the median and the length of the whiskers. As it is presented, the median falls to the left of the center of the box, which means that the distribution is positively skewed. We can also tell that the distribution is positively skewed as the right whisker is larger than the left whisker. Moving on, we're going to take a look at our scatter plot. The scatter plot for the demand for cocoa versus the price of cocoa. The scatter plot for the demand for cocoa versus the price of cocoa tells us significant information about the correlation between the two variables. From the scatter plot, we can tell that the line of best fit with the equation y equals 0.1879x plus 1260.8 is in the direction going up. This means that the correlation between the demand for cocoa and the price of cocoa is a positive correlation. This can also be read from the equation itself, with its slope 0.1879 being positive. The slope in the context represents the rate at which the price of cocoa increases with every increase in the demand for cocoa. Each increase in the demand for cocoa causes the price of cocoa to go up by 0.1879. From the equation of the line of best fit, we can also determine the value of the y variable when the x variable is 0 using the y-intercept. Here, our y-intercept is 1260.8, which means that the starting price of cocoa, where there is no demand, is $1,260.8 per ton. Aside from the direction of the correlation, we can also determine the strength of the correlation between the demand for cocoa and the price of cocoa using the square root of the r squared value 0.0535 to get the r value 0.2313. Since the correlation coefficient is less than 0.33, we can say that the price of cocoa has a weak correlation with the demand for cocoa. With the analysis, I therefore conclude that the price of cocoa has a weak positive correlation with the demand for cocoa, which I find odd, as I was expecting that these two variables would have a strong positive correlation, as that is how business makes sense. The demand increases, the price goes up. But due to some factors, the scatter plot shows a weak positive correlation between the demand for cocoa and the price of cocoa. One of these factors is the strength of dollar within each year. The exchange rate of dollar in the year 1980 was not the same in the year 2010, for example. This explains the fluctuation of values in the scatter plot, some are way up and some are way down a trend line. The scatter plot might have given a more prominent upward trend if the value of the dollar is stable and also by eliminating any other factors. With this information being taken into consideration, I have to look more into the outliers, whether they are to be removed or not. Aside from the strength of dollar, another factor that should also be looked at is the global supply of cocoa. The world's largest producer of cocoa comes from the Ivory Coast, an area susceptible to droughts, which greatly affects the number of cocoa being produced. The less supply of cocoa we have, the higher the price the cocoa becomes to compensate for the loss. Nevertheless, with my analysis and observations, I therefore conclude that my hypothesis is right. An increase in the demand for cocoa increases the price of cocoa as well. Aside from the strength of dollar and global supply of cocoa not being considered, there are not any more biases present in the analysis, as all of my references about demand and pricing of cocoa in 31 years are all pulled out from a trusted site directly from the International Cocoa Organization.